everyone, I'm Devleena, your host for today, welcoming you all to another exciting episode of Icons Behind Brands. And I'm elated to welcome our guest for today, who has over 2 decades of marketing leadership experience in leading technologies and Fortune 500 companies such as HCL, AMD, HP, Dell, and SAP. A highly accomplished marketer and a profound leader, I welcome Mr. Rahul Singh, who is a Vice President and Head of Marketing in SAP India Subcontinent. A warm welcome to you, Rahul.
Thank you, Devleena. Thank you for having me today, and it's a pleasure.
Yeah, Mr. Rahul, pleasure is all ours here. Having you here in the show I'm super excited with that. With over 2 decades of experience in the field of marketing, business, and technology, right? I'm sure the journey would have been vast with vast experiences and lot of stories. So would love to know more about your journey and how about your background. What are the changes you have seen over the period of time? So that would be nice if you share.
I've been fortunate to have been part of the technology industry for more than 2 decades. I started my career sometime in the middle of the 90s, and my first job was at a company called HCL Infosystems, which was one of the pioneering companies as far as information technology is concerned in India. And that was obviously a phenomenal experience. It gave me a lot of learning about the craft of marketing and also helped me understand how the IT industry itself works, right? And I think the culture of HCL was quite entrepreneurial, which allowed you a lot of autonomy, allowed you to be very creative with what you did. So I think a great start to a career, if I may. So I spent close to about 5 years in HCL, and then I moved to a company called AMD, which was the number 2 microprocessor manufacturer, and that was another great experience. I spent a little over 4 years at AMD. Incidentally, I was the first marketing manager for AMD in India, and those were really great times again. Trying to fight a much bigger competitor. Again, that role also allowed for a lot of creativity and a huge opportunity to learn. Then I moved to, of course, I moved to HP in end of 2004, as basically leading the marketing for their server and storage business, which was a sizable business, but of course, moving from a relatively smaller company to a giant like HP was a huge cultural shift. Again, a great learning experience, but I could very clearly see the difference between how a small company as opposed to a very large, process-driven organization. So, as you move along, you have to change the way you operate based on the culture of the employer that you work for. I then had a very short stint. After 5 years at HP, I had a short stint at Dell, which was an Asia Pacific role in their channel development or the indirect business that Dell was trying to develop at that point in time. But that was a very short stint. After I went back to HP in a different role as the marketing lead for their software and solutions business. Again, that was a relatively short stint, after which I moved to SAP in 2010. And since then, I've largely been in SAP except for a little break that I took in 2015 to work for a startup. But I've been in SAP for the last 5 years, and I took up this leadership role as the head of marketing sometime, I think, in May last year. So it has been interesting, and the last 2 years, of course, have been interesting for everybody, especially for people in the front office, right? People who are in sales and marketing who are required to either create demand or conduct customer-facing activities. It has been a very, very interesting year, to say the least. But I have really enjoyed, and the good thing about the way my career has spanned is that the technology industry has evolved, and I've had the opportunity to look at the evolution of the technology industry, especially in this market, which has been very, very different. So from the early days of the first the home computers, which never existed, which came into being in India in 1995, laptops, which was quite an elitist thing to have in those days, right? And then of course this whole evolution that we are seeing now of software being consumed over the cloud as opposed to the on-premise model, I think that is a huge shift. So in a nutshell, I think I've been quite fortunate to have been part of this whole journey that the industry has had, and I have had the opportunity to work with some really great leaders during this journey as well.
And with the evolution of technologies which you have seen, I mean, when we go back to the time when there used to be no computers at home, and having one computer at home was that was a privilege that time, and till now everybody has a laptop, all the members have a laptop. So I'm sure the journey would have been very enriching in terms of learning, in terms of creativity, and in terms of productivity as well.
Absolutely, and I will not trade off this journey with anything. I think it's just the right industry, which is really, really dynamic, keeps changing all the time, which is what makes working in this industry a lot more exciting compared to another industry, maybe.
Very true. And technology has always have been very exciting because the kind of magic it creates, to any function wherever it is implemented. So that is why it's very exciting. The dynamics of the consumers are also very exciting, and I'm sure we have a lot to discuss now. So let's talk about Rahul, about the customers, and talk about the SAP. Like, who are your target customers right now, consumers right now, about their demographics, and how are you reaching out to them right now?
Yes. So as you may be aware, SAP is basically a B2B enterprise software company, right? And still are a leading player in what we call the ERP software, which is really the back end on which a lot of companies run their business on. When we were predominantly, till about 7-8 years back, we were predominantly an ERP player with a very large market share. Our primary audience, I would say, would have been the CIO or the Chief Information Officer of the company. But what has happened in the last maybe 6, 7, 8 years is that SAP has also evolved, and our portfolio that we take to the market is a lot broader now, so beyond the ERP, which is what we call the digital core of the company, we have lots of solutions that we take to market in the line of business areas, functional areas within the companies, right? For example, we acquired a company called SuccessFactors long back, which is a leading solution for human experience management. The entire hire to retire experience offered to employees. So now, when you talk about HXM, clearly you are not the first audience that you approach within a company. If you're trying to pitch for HXM, is probably the CHRO or the head of HR in that company, right? Not necessarily the CIO. So similarly, if there are other solution areas like like procurement, for example, right? And similarly, there is something called CX, which is customer experience solution. So for all of these solution areas, unlike earlier where we were selling largely to the CIO, now our audience has become a lot broader, right? So we are trying to sell to the chief marketing officer, you are selling to the digital officer, you are selling to the chief human resource officer, or the procurement officer, right? So there are now our audience has become a lot more broader, which is actually has been a marketing challenge as well, right? Because these audiences are relatively new for us. They may not have the same brand perception or salience that CIOs had for SAP earlier, right? That has been one of the marketing challenges, given that we are selling to a broader range of contacts or business heads within an organization.
Right. The change and the dynamics of marketing, I mean, how it is changing, the dynamics of technology, products, everything is changing. So that is how the consumer demographics and consumer behavior is also changing. So it's very, very important to know about that. With that, I would also want to talk about SAP being a brand, right? It talks about a higher purpose, and now if you ask, every brand talks about the higher purpose rather than just selling their product and services, right? Which is very important. I want to talk about what is the importance of a meaningful purpose driven marketing, and also how to ensure that to balance between truth well told at the same time not overclaiming and overselling. I think this is a dilemma for any marketer and any organization in that way. Truth has to be well told, but at the same time it should not be overclaiming and overselling also. So if you would like to talk.
In my opinion, there are two parts to it, right? Almost every company today you will see will have a department called CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, right? Which is, in my opinion, different from embedding a purpose in whatever you are doing, right? Those are two different things. Like I said, contributes a certain portion of their revenues or their profits to corporate social responsibility, but I think in a deeper sense, if you are able to embed a purpose in your business model itself, I think that probably is the best approach. Our mission, as we define it, is to change human lives and make the world a better place. And since we have been in the business of actually helping companies achieve greater efficiencies, being able to become more innovation ready, make governments become more efficient in their citizen service delivery, etc., etc. I think by the very nature of the solutions that we take to market, I think the purpose that we talk about is embedded in what we really do, right? And very interestingly, last year SAP celebrated 25 years of its existence in India, and I had the opportunity to work on a very special project, which was like creating a commemorative film about this whole journey. And interestingly, the approach that we took was we looked at India over the last 25 years, okay, and how India has changed in the last 25 years. And basically, when you say 25 years, since 1996, right? And very interestingly, we looked at sector after sector, whether you look at our utilities like power generation, for example, if you look at aviation as in the airport infrastructure that we had, the road infrastructure, oil and gas production, if you look at automotive industry, every single one of those areas has fundamentally changed, right? If you remember 1996, we had probably 2 models of cars available in India. Today, the whole world is present. A power deficient country, till 25 years back. Today, we are a power generation surplus economy, right? If you remember the condition of our airports in the 90s, and the kind of airports that we have today is a sea change, right? So we looked at all of those sectors and we realized in each of these sectors, SAP has had a huge contribution, whether it is aviation, where we only had, like I said, very few airports, very few international flights. Is all the 100 plus airports today are managed using SAP software, for instance, right? 8 out of the 10 automotive manufacturers that you see in India today run on SAP. More than 50% of the power generated in this country is generated by companies that run on SAP, right? So that I thought, while we were working on it, it was such a great revelation, and it was a matter of huge pride. And that's how we embedded this whole approach into that commemorative film, and maybe I'll share it with you later, which I think was a great example of how purpose can be embedded in what you actually do and not necessarily as corporate social responsibility. So that has been largely SAP's to that. I don't remember what was the second part of your question now.
Yeah, so let me repeat it. So the second part is very important for any marketer and especially aspiring marketers to know that how to ensure that one should balance between truth well told, at the same time it should not be overselling or overclaiming.
The new age customer, irrespective of what he or she is buying, is a lot more aware and a lot more socially and environmentally conscious today, right? So that is another huge change that's happening, right? Which is one of the reasons why companies, need to become more responsible, not only in the way they operate, but also in the way they communicate, right? So like you said, cannot potentially overclaim or overpromise and underdeliver. And in today's day and age, with the social media and all the customer channels that are available to provide feedback, in our case, of course, since we are a B2B enterprise software company where the purpose for us is to make our customers more efficient and innovation ready, there is a lot of industry benchmarking that happens, which allows our customers to actually compare what they were expected to achieve after implementing a certain software, right? So they can very easily refer to industry benchmarks and see, for a company same size in a similar industry, have we achieved those benchmarks after buying a certain software or not? So I would say probably in our business, it's a lot more difficult to promise because our outcomes are completely business critical, right? So it's not, it just does not fit into our business model at all.
Right. And if I have to summarize it, what I would have understood with that, Rahul, is like the core philosophy, the core value should be aligned to every thing what the brand is doing, starting from the philosophy and what you are delivering, your care for your customer, your operations, and at the same time how you're communicating to your customer. So it has to be aligned and embedded in each and every aspects of the business cycle. So last 1 year, what was your major roadblocks or challenges that you have faced, Rahul?
A large part of the way we approach marketing and demand generation is that it involves a lot of physical interaction, right? A large part of our mix was what we call physical events, right? Where we host large number of face-to-face interactions with potential customers or existing customers. It could be small format roundtables, or it could be mid to large size conferences or summits that you would organize. That was a large part of our marketing mix till the first quarter of 2020, right? And the moment the lockdown started, that whole model became irrelevant, right? And we had to very quickly pivot everything that we were doing to virtual. Uh, Look out for platforms that kind of replicate that experience quickly, which I think was the biggest challenge, which we tackled in the, let's say, in the the second quarter of 2020, and kind of started getting better at it. Generally, the reaction is, we used to do physical events. Now, how can we replicate that experience onto a virtual platform, right? Which is just not possible, because it's a completely different medium. Content was already very, very important, right? Whether it's physical or not. But it became absolutely critical that your content was absolutely relevant to your customers or prospects that you're talking to, because for them the exit cost was very low, right? They could simply switch off and move on. If they were not commuting to a hotel to attend an event. So it was very important that your content was relevant, it was compelling, and it was engaging. That is something that we had to kind of pivot our entire marketing model towards. Luckily, 2020 turned out to be a pretty good year as far as our marketing and demand generation efforts are concerned. So there are India team within SAP was the best marketing team across Asia Pacific, and so I think we did a pretty good job of that pivoting. But the other piece, of course, is while the shift towards digital was anyways happening, right? Even before COVID, more and more, because even if it was a B2B buying cycle, the way customers would, consume information about your solutions had started moving to for a longish period of time, right? But it was very quickly accelerated after COVID. So a lot of digital-led marketing came to the fore, right? Whether it was, social media marketing, how you ran your search marketing, for example. Those were things that, well, I wouldn't say a challenge, but clearly it became the leading part of our marketing mix, as opposed to being, a sideshow earlier, right? So I think that was a challenge, but at the same time, I would say it was a huge opportunity as well, because it's a lot more efficient, a lot more measurable, a lot more accountable way of running marketing. So I would say it was a challenge, but I think a great opportunity as well, because it accelerated our own digital transformation of the marketing function itself.
That's true. Very, a valid point, Rahul. Every challenge that carries an opportunity. As this says, and it also gives us an opportunity to explore beyond what we are not thinking about. So last 2 years has given us a lot of challenge, lots of, that has thrown us a lot of different aspects, mindset and panic, different emotions. But somehow every business, they have pivoted, they have tried their, best. And there were many businesses that have, worked very well in 2020 and 2021 after that.
True.
I think, it's on like how we are taking it, how fast we are changing it with the changes which is happening in the society and all. And this is all about marketing and brand and life, you ask. Right?
True.
So how do you calculate a brand, Rahul? And what are the essential elements for that?
Typically there are, some standard metrics that, that let's say the marketing industry would use to kind of measure the equity of a brand, right? I think number one, of course, is the financial value, the financial metric, right? How much revenue does a brand generate? I think that would be number one measure of a brand. But I think it goes a little bit deeper. I would say there are two pieces, right? One, brand is basically a set of promises that you take to the market, right? Right. But there is one measure which is called brand salience, which is how visible is your brand? Okay, how many people know you, right? It can be, it can further be divided into how much depth of salience, or say what is the salience depth, what is the breadth, etc., etc. But largely it is about how many people know your brand, right? That is salience. But especially in the context of our kind of brands, right? Like a B2B brand where everybody is not my customer, right? It is the business, it's a business to business brand, and our constituency within which we play is largely the business community, right? So maybe a small percentage of the total population that we have, right? In these cases, I think the second aspect, which is relevance, the brand relevance. Okay, now relevance is what I spoke about. If you have a promise associated with your brand, how true are you? You're saying my brand is supposed to achieve X. Are you delivering that, and does the market see you delivering on that promise, right? So I think largely I would say number one is the brand revenue, then the brand salience, which is the sheer visibility of the brand and the number of people that have heard or know the brand, and the third piece is brand relevance, which is how close the market perceives you to the promise that you made to the market or the consumer.
Right. So this question always has a lot of aspects, and it's like it has a lot of confusion also around that. What is brand? How do I calculate brand? See, I can calculate other things, but how is my brand? So I think these are very precise point to look from a different angle, different aspects, from a business point of view, from your presence point of view, how your customer perceive you, that point of view. I think it's a 360-degree angle. So Rahul, let's talk about the topics which is going around. How do you see the technologies like AI and blockchain, they are changing the entire brand building process?
I'm really not sure about blockchain at this point in time from a marketing perspective, but AI for sure. Okay, I think it is already making a huge difference. Okay, especially in areas like customer engagement, customer retention, right? In the e-commerce space, for example, where AI models are being used to predict which customers are going to desubscribe your service, what will they buy next. They will recommend what is it that you can sell to the customer, because the power that AI brings is that it looks through thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of data points in a very quick span of time, and is able to give you insights which would humanly not be possible for you to see, right? So absolutely, I think AI is going to be at the forefront of marketing, and in fact it can fundamentally change how marketing will be done, right? And when you combine with analytics and big data, that becomes a very, very important tool for marketers. And at the moment, you can see the impact in consumer industries where you have huge volumes of customers and we're selling a large number of SKUs, etc. but I think it will have applications in all kinds of marketing going forward.
Yeah, and that is how, as we cannot escape the data and analytics part from marketing, it's the most crucial part, and combining the data and analytics with the AI, which is impacting the marketing in a very positive way. And I'm looking forward for, a lot of technologies and a lot of ease, which, the technology is providing the marketing segment. So this is something which I always feel very fascinated to talk about. So Rahul, as a leader, as a head of marketing, what principle do you rely upon during the toughest moment?
In a scenario like that, I think you cannot shift your goalpost, basically, is what I'm saying, right? As long as you stay true to the objective of how you can support your business through your function, as long as you stay true to that, you will find different answers for the same or different solutions to the same problem. And that's exactly what we ended up doing, right? When we moved from a completely 70-80% physical model to almost 100% virtual and digital model, and we still achieved the same objectives that we were supposed to achieve. So like I said, as long as you are clear what your objective is and you stay true to that, you can address the challenges that come your way.
True. I really like the point, Rahul, which could be implementable. Like as you said, that don't change the goal. Keep your goal there. Change your perspective and try to find out a solution in different ways with whatever challenge it comes. Right.
True.
And that's a great
Absolutely true.
leadership lesson.
Because very often what happens is people would say, boss, ye nahi ho payega abhi, right? We were supposed to do 100, now the scenario has changed, so now we will be able to do only 70, right? I don't think that's a great idea, right? That's what, to me, that's what creativity is all about, right? It is about solving problems. So as long as you don't change your goalpost, you will, and keep working at it, you will find new solutions to the same challenge.
Very true, very true. And I feel that is how you orient your mind to work for bigger challenges as well. When you start from the small challenges, and instead of excuses, you're just finding out the solutions and more creative ideas, and that's how your brain is trained for any challenges in future. You do not negotiate with your brain that whether I should change
Absolutely
my plans.
Absolutely
Right.
true.
With that, Rahul, now we are moving to a very interesting section, which is a rapid fire round, and which is going to give us an opportunity to know you as a person a little more. And you need to answer in one word or in one sentence, as minimum as possible. What is leadership for you?
Leadership for me is, the ability of a person to be able to take people along to the sheer conviction of your idea without having any direct reporting lines, okay? Which is, if it needs a little bit of explaining, basically anybody can be a leader. You don't need to necessarily have a team of people reporting to you, right? If you can convince a bunch of 10 people around your idea and take them along and believe in your idea, that in my opinion is leadership. They don't need to be necessarily reporting to you.
Oh, that's a great one, Rahul. So what is a book you are planning to read?
Of late, I've just started reading a book that somebody gifted me. I have a special interest in screenplay writing. Okay, so I've been reading a book. The way it's sitting right here, it's called a book called Story. Okay, and it is basically like a tutorial on how to write a great screenplay, right? Written by Hollywood's most successful screenplay writers. So I'm hoping I'll read this book over the 30 days or
Superb.
so.
Superb. If you ask me about reading, I mean, reading is something I do it when I get a chance, but more than reading, I listen more. I mean, while my walk and other things. So I listen more the audibles and the books and the podcasts. So that is how I somehow gather the information from outside.
Yeah.
Who has been the greatest influence to you?
My father had a huge influence on the way I thought and how I approached life, which continues some of the stuff that I learned from him continue to help me, especially around integrity around the workplace, how you should play hard but always be fair is something that that I really kind of learned from him and still run my life with those principles.
Yeah, those, I mean, if you have the influencer at home, nothing like that, I mean, the kind of elements you acquire from that time, it becomes the asset for lifetime.
True.
So, if not a brand marketer, what would you be?
If I had not been a technology marketer, I would still be some kind of a storyteller. Okay, one of the interests that I have is, like I said, to make films and write screenplays, or I also dabble a bit into writing poetry, etc. But I think it would be one of the creative areas that I think I would have ended up in if not in marketing.
Super. What is the best thing that has happened to you in last 1 year?
And that film that I spoke about, the 25-year Silver Jubilee commemoration film for SAP in India. I think that was something I really enjoyed working on it. Obviously, it was created by an external agency, but I was hugely invested in it. So much so that I almost wrote the entire script for it. But during the writing of that and the production of that movie, I realized how far India has traveled in the last 25. Sometimes you don't sit back and compare it, compare what you are to where you were, right? And it was just phenomenal to see how far India has come in the last 25 years in almost every sector that you can think of. This whole IT industry that we are talking about just did not exist. And India is like a superpower in the IT services space today, only in the last 5 years. So that whole experience and being involved in that project was probably one of the, at least from a work perspective, that was a very, very interesting thing that happened.
Very nice. So probably in the next thing I would love to go and watch that film, because
Yeah, I'll send you.
it's very exciting.
Yes.
So when are you most inspired?
More often than not, it comes from a piece of art. Okay, when you look at a painting or a great piece of architecture, or it could be a piece of music that you listen to, I would say I get inspired by a work of art. It could be a poet, it could be a poem, it could be a piece of music, or a painting, or whatever else.
Clearly defines a creative person. Yeah. Okay. So early in the morning or late in the night?
Like I said, there is no time. There is no pattern that I have been able to establish. It can happen at any time, and that's the beauty of it.
That's true. That's true. I mean, just go with the flow, be agile, be flexible. So, what is the best compliment you have ever received?
I don't know whether it's the best or the worst compliment, because it's the same, right? Because when people talk to me and I tell them about my 20 plus years of career, and then we talk about creativity, and then they tell me you are in the wrong job, okay? So I take it as a compliment. Basically, they're saying you are very, very creative, but what are you doing, or what have you been doing here for the last 2+ years? So it's a compliment for entrepreneurs as well, right? In some ways.
Right. But at least, I mean, you get a lot of opportunity to use that creativity in marketing also, because you cannot.
Yeah, but then that is the kind of creativity that you mentioned, right? It has to happen between 9 to 5.
Right.
It has to happen
It's
within
something.
a.
Yeah, it's a plant, and
It,
you have certain
it has to
brackets.
happen within a. It has to happen within that box, right? It can't
Yes,
be anything
the
else.
organic one.
So that goes against the grain of creativity, in my opinion, which has to be
Right.
freewheeling and
Yes.
not fettered by time and space and other constraints.
Right. It is actually reminding me when I tell my content writers and my designers, okay, you have a timeline, you need to write creative content within
Yeah.
line.
So
So I
there
think
is so there is a difference between, I don't know if you've heard this about M.F. Hussain, right? The famous painter.
yes.
So he used to paint film posters, right? In those days, the posters were not printed; they were painted, hand painted by people. So he used to do that, right? I mean, and then he became one of the most many years later. He became probably the most celebrated painter, right? But that is also painting, right? The posters that he painted, Amitabh Bachchan or whoever, whatever film, right? But if you ask him, that was just the job, right? Because he needed to, he was just using his base level skills to feed himself. That's not creativity, in my opinion. It's still painting, but not something that he wanted to paint for himself, right? So that's the difference between creativity and being employed in a creative field. Those are two different things.
It has to be an unconditional one, right? I mean, without any condition and bracket, it has to just come up.
True.
I am able to relate to it. I mean, sometimes it just happens and you feel like, wow, I just wrote this, and you don't believe that was you. So what is an important life lesson for someone to learn?
If you have a gift, don't take it lightly. If you're good at something, that should become your career eventually.
We are just out of the rapid fire round, and before we wind up the conversation, I want you to speak to the aspiring marketers. There are a lot of B school students who are going to watch this conversation. So what is your message for them?
I think number one message is congratulations. You are at the right place at the right time. And the second thing is, if you are getting into business, and we keep hearing about this, right? Every company has a customer success department, and everybody will say customer is the king, and we kind of build our business models, our products with the customer at the center. My only learning is that it is absolutely true. Okay, you can never succeed in business unless you have the customer at the center. Okay, you could be in marketing, you could be in finance, manufacturing, design, product development. It is the only purpose of business exists is for the customer, right? If there is no customer, there is no business, right? So that, I think, we don't, while we keep saying it, but we don't imbibe it as a culture, right? When you do that, you will realize whether you are building a startup. If you don't understand your customer, if you don't empathize with that customer, what startup will you build? And I gave you the example of Uber, right? They were designing for that customer who is looking for that cab, right? So they figured out these are the 5 things that are missing today in that potential customer's life, and I will build my business around it, right? It was affordability, ease of getting that cab, how quickly can I get it, safety, etc., right? Those were the, let's say, 5 or 6 concerns. They built that whole model around that customer, right? It was not about the taxi driver, it was not about the car, it was about that customer, right? So that is, I think, the second important learning. And there is no learning there. It's always talked about. The learning is that you really need to kind of imbibe system to become successful in business.
Mm-hmm. True. It's the core that always invest on learning. Learning is a lifelong process, and when we learn, we actually give us an opportunity to include a lot of information which we are not aware. So it's very important to know that what we know and what we don't know is like too much. So we need to keep changing our dynamics with the change in the life. I mean, however it is happening. Right. So, with that, Rahul, I mean, I literally enjoyed the complete conversation with you. And thank you for being part of IBB, Icons Behind Brand. And thank you for giving us time from your busy schedule. And it was very insightful, knowledgeful, to the point, and it is going to address a lot of issues for us, for marketers, for business owners, and for the aspiring marketers as well. So thank you for your time. Thanks for being here, Rahul.
Thank you, Devleena. I think the pleasure is all mine.